All right. Hi, everyone. Just for the sake of time, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Jarrod Ventura, and I'm currently a PhD student at Chapman University. And welcome to my presentation, The Edge of Inclusion, Transformative Pathways in Adult Learning. So I always love to start my presentations off with a land acknowledgement. I'm currently residing in Orange County, California. And so I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the Ahashiman and Tongva people who are the traditional owners of the land where I am located. And so today, what our workshop will look like, I have a quick reflection on talking about like what comes to mind when you think of adult learners, a little bit of context framework and things to consider. So these are student development theories from higher education background. And then I have some recommendations and conclusion on how to engage adult learners. But first of all, this is where I previously attended school. I did work full-time in student affairs for 3 to 4 years before starting my PhD at Chapman University. And so currently right now I'm teaching strategic and corporate communication within the School of Communication. And so I have worked at the University of Massachusetts Global as a financial advisor and an academic advisor, and now as an adjunct faculty member, primarily working with military and adult learners. And so one of the things that I love to stress and talk about in these type of presentations is what my teaching philosophy is. And so the core tenets of my philosophy and how I uphold them in practice is offering kindness. So anything customer service, patience, flexibility, and then empathy to help recognize biases that I may bring to the classroom. And then always trying to ensure that no matter if it's in person or online, that it's a comfortable space for everyone who's involved. And so that includes open body language. As I'm sitting down, I'm talking with my hands. I always give my full attention. And then eye contact on virtual screens is looking directly at the camera. So I just love to incorporate how I incorporate my teaching philosophy. So one of the first student development theories that I'm going to cover, we'll talk about Nancy Schlossberg, but what is an adult learner first? Because I want to make sure that we all have the same working definition. And so I usually define an adult learner as someone who is 25 years or older, has a plethora of life and work experience, and this allows them to connect what they're learning at their job to what they're learning in class. So that kinesthetic learning can be leveraged in an appropriate way. They also have learning needs that change frequently. And sometimes they have the mindset of like, okay, what do I need to know to help me be better at my job or be better in my career and for career growth and development? And then last but not least, they have an independent self-concept. So the majority of the time, they're directing their own learning inside and outside of the classroom, but it's still important for us as faculty and instructors to facilitate that learning as much as possible and make those connections explicit for them. Also talking a little bit too on why adult learners in particular. My family comes from a military background, and so they had a lot of barriers going into higher education. And so I love advocating for adult learners, even though I myself have never been one. But again, 23% of students in higher education are adult learners. And a lot of the times it's overlooked that they're juggling these multiple commitments, whether it's family, full-time work, or they're working a second job and going to school. That's been really difficult. And a lot of the times too, adult learners can engage in career changes. And so, they see their identity not only as workers first, but primarily like students second. And so that's one of the things when talking with adult learners, they always introduce and identify themselves by where they work, what their job title is, and being a student is secondary in terms of their identity. So it's helpful to understand that framework when tailoring content to students. And then adult learners are disproportionately at risk of stopping or dropping out. So a lot, when I worked in financial aid, there were a lot of like financial struggles for adult learners, especially during the pandemic. And so if they are financially challenged, that's going to take a lot of their cognitive energy and they won't be able to focus on school. So leading into that, I've already talked about one of the primary barriers, but another one is lack of time, problems with childcare, transportation, or work. And sometimes students have a lack of interest in the class material because maybe it doesn't directly align with what they're doing at work. But that transferable skill is still important for them to know. And again, part of it is being explicit and transparent in framing how we present our information and how it can be used in a way that's effective. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Nancy Schlossberg, and this is a student development theory that can help us tailor the content for adult learners. So it's called mattering and marginality, and I think it's a straightforward concept. So mattering is whether we matter to someone else. Do we feel like we're including our students in the classroom? Do they feel like what they're saying in discussion boards or in-person synchronous discussions, that their comments are valued and understood? And so there are 5 aspects of mattering that Nancy Schlossberg talks about. And so it's talking about attention, importance, ego extension, and appreciation. And so one of the things with ego extension is that as faculty and instructors, I always try to offer encouragement as much as possible, especially if it's their first time tackling something. Like, for example, today I was covering APA with a student. And so I always acknowledge, like, hey, this is a wonderful start, but these are some things that you can improve on. But just know, when I first started doing APA, it was difficult for me. On the other side, you have marginality. So again, this is feeling excluded, feeling like you don't fit in. A lot of the times I make this joke to students. When you start a new job or a new role, you definitely feel that marginality happening, because it's like you're a character who is entering season 4 or 5 of an extremely established show like Modern Family. And so sometimes you don't know your role, you don't know your boundaries with other people, what people's working styles are. And so they question themselves if they matter to anyone. So, what ways can we help students matter in the classroom, whether in person or virtual? And so, one of the things that I always try to do in synchronous classes is to check in with students at the beginning, or I check in with them via email. And I know it's a little more work on our end as faculty and instructors, but I think it's really important for us to check in with them to see where they're at. If they've missed a lot of class, follow up with them and say, hey, I haven't seen you in class. Are you doing okay? That can help them feel mattered. And when they feel like they have a community that cares about them, they're more likely to persist in higher education. Same thing too. I always encourage, and from my student affairs background, for students to connect with student affairs staff. So whether it's their academic advisor, academic coach, having like weekly or monthly meetings with them to make sure that they're accountable, especially in competency-based education programs, where it's online, self-paced. So sometimes professors aren't checking in with you, but also being able to offer like drop-in Zoom hours as a faculty or coffee chats, and trying to demystify the office hours policy. It's like, hey, come in and have a chat, talk with me about my research or any questions that you have about the class. And I just had a student recently come into one of my coffee chats just to chat with me about my previous marketing experience. And I was like, I love that you're interested in that, and here's how I can help you. With ego extension, I use Canva a lot, and I'm sure a lot of other faculty do, whether for it's their slides or for making flyers. But a lot of the times this can apply for like CBE programs. And so you can always congratulate students whenever they've finished a course, or, a particular milestone or a final paper. And then, you can always take turns with other faculty to congratulate students, so it's not all on you. The second theory that I'm going to talk about is Nancy Schlossberg's transition theory. And so this is also from 1989. And this is, to give context to this theory, it's talking about the types of transitions that people go through, whether it's from high school to college, or whether they're working and coming back to college, any type of transition in their life. And so there are three types of transitions, but the one that I'm focusing on today is an anticipated transition, which usually occurs predictably because students know that they're going to start school. They've applied, gone through the admissions process, and they've been admitted to a particular term. And so one of the things that's important that this theory considers is talking about the relationship to the transition and the setting in which the transition occurs, right? So it's something that they want to do, hopefully, because they've applied to college. I've had other students where their employer has paid for their tuition. And so there's a little bit less motivation and they see it as like a free commodity. And so sometimes they're like, it's fine. It's free education. And then the impact. So what does the impact look like on their daily life? Like how significant will this transition be in terms of their daily routine? So if it's like an online asynchronous courses, will they have to set aside 1 hour, 2 hours every day to do their work? How are they going to fit that in if they're already taking care of their kids and they've worked 8 hours that day? And so there are 4 S's of transition theory: situation, self, support, and strategies. But today I'm only going to focus on strategies. And so one of the things that we can do as educators is even just reframing the way that we talk to students. And so this question I ask in a coffee chat or a Zoom drop-in hour, and I ask the student, I'm like, okay, when we're meeting right now, what do you want to be different as a result in meeting with me today that will make this worthwhile your time? So not only one, am I acknowledging what goal I want to set for the meeting or for the quick chat, but two, I'm also acknowledging that your time is limited. And even acknowledging that their time is limited makes them feel mattered. So these two kind of work together. And again, even not only as faculty, academic advisors, financial aid advisors can use this type of framing in order to make students feel like they matter in the classroom. So the last bit of the presentation, I wanted to talk about how faculty can use AI to not only decrease their workload, but make the classroom environment engaging for students, whether it's in person or synchronous. And so personally, since I am a PhD student at Chapman University, I do use Copilot because we have access to it. But one of the cool things about Copilot is that it has visual features. It's easily integrated with Microsoft Office applications. And this is my biggest thing with Copilot is that it has a commercial data feature. So it doesn't save any of the data after the chat session ends. So, and it's protected. Where on the other hand, ChatGPT is using your text to train the large language model. And you can go back and access that chat and it updates and it trains itself based on what you have inputted as a user. Copilot does not do that. And so this is very helpful because, as a current student, I'm working on publications and there's some things that I don't want to be released onto the internet before it's published. And so Copilot's a great way of protecting that safety of information within the publication instead of putting it in ChatGPT. Because if I put it in ChatGPT, it's going out into the internet where it can be used to train. So, but the only downside with ChatGPT is that it is limiting without a paid for account, and they have 3 or 4 prompts that you can use or that you can chat with. And so I don't have time to demo it today, but I do encourage you to explore it. It's copilot.microsoft.com. And then ChatGPT, some of the advantages with it, which we're all familiar with, it's better for creative tasks or casual conversation. And then the free version is more accessible than Copilot's free version. So one of the things that I've done, and I'll show an example in the next slide, is using AI and Copilot to create real life case studies for adult learners. And so these are some strategies that you can use to be really specific when it comes to using AI. So you can instruct AI to be specific, give it a goal that it needs to meet. So if you tell it to write a story, it's going to produce generic results. But if you tell it to write a story about a man and a woman who fall in love, and the target audience is for college students, and I want it written with a more casual tone, then you're going to get a better story out of it by being more specific. And so you can always prompt Copilot to say, act as if. So, one of the areas that I love studying is positive media psychology. And so I have this example here. It says, act as a communication professor for positive media psych. Create 2 case study scenarios where college age students have to figure out how to leverage social media to create awareness of its negative impacts and include at least 3 discussion questions. So this is more specific than write a story. And so you always have to tell AI what output you want, whether it's a case study, a story, report, images, audio, and then also give it an example too. So even within this prompt of act as if, I would include an example. And of course, do not upload any type of copyrighted work, and then give feedback to it and tell AI which parts were helpful, which parts need improvement. So that way you can really tailor what you want out of Copilot. So these are the results that it generated. It's a little small, but it talks about a digital detox campaign. And so it says a group of college students noticed that their peers were experiencing increased stress and anxiety due to excessive social media use. So 1, it created that case study for me. And then 2, it also named that case study. And so it says these were the actions taken, right? So they created awareness posts, did some challenges, workshops, and seminars, and did support groups to keep people accountable. Now at the bottom, it says, what strategies can be implemented to maintain reduced social media use after the campaign ends? One of the cool things with Copilot is that if you already have a pre-existing example, it can almost, duplicate that example. And then I always encourage interdisciplinary type of work in my classroom. So I will always say, like, analyze the same case study from a sociology lens versus a positive media psychology lens. And then it'll create those discussion questions, and it gives students the opportunity to attack a problem from multiple angles while also trying to reduce your workload. Personally, I am transparent when I do use like in-class case studies with students, saying, hey, I did use Copilot. I demonstrate how and how not to use AI in my classroom. That is a topic for a different day. But one of the recommendations that I have are jigsaw puzzles and time waster envelope activity. These are ones that will be linked to within this presentation. And then in terms of motivation for adult learners, it's always great to visualize how they're spending their time, what they're spending their time on. And so I've included a template there, but I also always remind people to use asset-minded approaches when it comes to students. So, words like at-risk students, right? That's not an asset-based approach. It's more deficit-based, saying that, they're more likely to fail. And then short-term goals, setting them with your students. You can always provide concrete examples from previous students to help them gauge what level of quality and the type of work that you're offering, and then networking, whether it's in person or virtual. I try to group students by major, identity. Like I said, I do have a lot of military students because at UMass Global, about 91% of our students are adult learners. And so a majority of them are either parents or military or both, right? So those intersectional identities, but some of the resources that I like to recommend where some of these ideas came from are from these books. So creating significant learning experiences, reach everyone, teach everyone as part of universal design for learning, inclusive teaching. And I love this one at the bottom, small teaching. This talks about how you don't have to overhaul your entire class. You can just implement one new change each semester, each session. And that's part of small teaching to make those big changes. These are some virtual engagement resources that I also use in my classroom. So I use like Kahoot, Mentimeter, Nearpod, Padlet, Poll Everywhere, School Track and Study Stack are both scheduling tools for students to help plan out their schedule. And then I just want to leave off with this last quote that anyone who stops learning is old, whether at 20 or 80. Anyone who keeps learning stays young. And that's from Henry Ford. And I just like to wrap up by saying that transformational learning starts with us. And so here are some of the references of where I got this information from. And I just wanted to thank you all for your time. And so I know that there are some questions rolling in. And so this question says, do you have a favorite AI tool, ChatGPT versus Copilot versus others? So my favorite one actually is Copilot, just because of the commercial data feature in particular. And I like the integration with Microsoft Office applications as well. But I think it's only because I have a like premium paid for version by my university, but I do like Copilot better. And I like that it includes photos in it too. So sometimes if I'm making an assignment, like analyze your favorite music video and tell me what is being told in the music video, it will actually include the music video and the sources of where it got it from. So all of the information that it's populating, it tells you what website it's coming from directly. Great question.